not too bad. I'm happy to be off at least one more time again. At some point.
Oh, look at that. We're live. Hey, thank you all for joining. Wow, I was just commenting to the guests that I'm a little bit nervous. This is my first time doing one of these things, but I kind of feel like I'm at the starting line of one of the 200s. Like, I've done all the prep I can do. Everything is laid out. I have a plan. But of course, you know, things are going to go as they're going to go. And I'm just really glad that you're all here to listen to a conversation with myself and Courtney Boyle and Aaron Fleischer and Nate Dervin about running 4 200s in 1 year. Sean Nakamura is on a plane right now going to visit his father, so I'm afraid he couldn't join us today. He sends his love, I'm sure, and we will at least talk a little bit about him during our time today because he is a legend in this sport. So anyway, thank you for joining. Just a little bit of housekeeping to get out of the way. Thank you for watching my YouTube channel. If you haven't subscribed, please consider doing so. There's also a join button. If you're a really big fan, you could do $2.99 a month for some exclusive content. And then, of course, that helps the channel and helps everything move forward. So today we're going to be talking about the Triple Crown plus Cocodona 250. There was the 5 of us did all 4 races, and so just to recap, in case you don't know, or in case you've forgotten, or in case you're like us, you've done them all 4, and you're like, oh my god, I can't believe that was 6 months ago. The series of 200s started in Arizona in May with the Cocodona 250, a 250-mile race from Prescott to Flagstaff. Of course, at the very last minute, the course was changed due to wildfires, but we started that in May, and then about a month later we went to Tahoe on the California-Nevada border for Tahoe 200, and this race was also not on its normal course due to a wildfire last year. So this reroute had us do the race as an out and back, starting from Homewood and going to the Heavenly Ski Resort. 2 months later, we were in Washington State for the Bigfoot 200. This course traverses the large sections of wilderness near Mount St. Helens and Mount Adams. A tremendously beautiful but very demanding event. And then the last run in the series was the Moab 240 in Moab, Utah, which we finished earlier last week. So this is the series. And of course, the last 3, Moab, Bigfoot, and Tahoe, make up the Triple Crown of 200s. And so that's what we want to talk about today, is doing all of these races, the Cocodona and the Triple Crown. Depending on where you look, if you're looking at runner's manuals or you watch for the results in Strava, the numbers really do vary quite widely even. But together, these runs are about 900 miles total with over 130,000 feet of vertical gain. The people who did it this year are these amazing athletes who we're going to be talking to shortly. So Aaron Fleischer is from San Diego. He ran his first 200 at Cocodona in 2021, so that was last year. And last year he was also scheduled to do the Triple Crown, but due to the cancellation of Tahoe because of the fires, that threw a wrench into that plan. But so last year he still completed 3 200s, and then this year he completed 4 200s. So amazing athlete. Courtney Boyle is from Lakewood, Colorado, and she ran her first ultra just 3 years ago. And she was also in the inaugural Cocodona 250 back in May 2021. Nate Dervin is in New Jersey, Cape May, New Jersey, and Nate did the Triple Crown last year. And this year, in addition to the Triple Crown and Cocodona, Nate also ran Badwater. So an amazing athlete. Unfortunately, Sean can't be with us live today, but he's from San Diego and really is a legend in the 200 world. He ran every edition of the Tahoe 200, including a win in 2017, And this year he finished 6th place at Tahoe. And of course, Sean doesn't stop running when his 200s are over. He is currently in the middle of a run streak of over 4,300 days. So he's just, he's incredibly athletic, but also incredibly kind. I was so blessed to spend some time with him on the trail at a couple of these races. Lastly, me. I ran last year's inaugural 200, and I loved it so much that I came back in 2022 to see how the race would improve. And then I separately decided I would do the Triple Crown. My daughter suggested, hey, Dad, you should do the Triple Crown. So I took the bait and signed up. But then later I realized, oh no, now I've signed up for 4 200s all in 1 year. I'm incredibly honored to be here among these incredible athletes. So I'm going to press this button and bring them all on screen. And so here's Courtney and Aaron and Nate. Nate in the lower left, Aaron up there, and hi, Courtney. Thank you guys so much for being a part of this. Like I said, I'm a little bit nervous about having this adventure with you guys on screen today, but what we did is such an incredible achievement that I think that having an opportunity to talk about it with our friends online will inspire some people and yeah, I just, it's so impressive what we've all done. So I think so the next step is let's introduce each of you. I'd like to have each of you talk about yourselves a little bit, and then we'll start with Aaron, then Courtney, and then Nate, and then we'll get into the questions. So Aaron, if you're ready, would you please tell us all about yourself? Tell us a little bit about you.
Wes, thanks for setting this up, man. This is super fun. But I'm going to use the opportunity first to sort of plug an issue that I wanted to raise some awareness for. It's October. It's Breast Cancer Awareness Month. My dad's actually a men's breast cancer survivor. Most people don't know that men can even get breast cancer. And so I've been raising some money throughout Bigfoot into Moab. I'm not looking for any likes or follows, but if you go to my Instagram, which is Mitten Madness, and there's a link to make a donation, even $2 or $5, goes a really long way. I've been trying to raise $1,000. I'm halfway there. If I could even get 100 people to do $2, that'd mean a lot probably for breast cancer research. So thank you. For me, this has been such an interesting ride over the last 18 months because I really had no real ultra history or grew up running or doing like really any of this stuff. But I started off through hiking in about 2014, 2015. I put in a bunch of miles on the Tahoe Rim Trail, the Arizona Trail, the Pacific Crest Trail, the Colorado Trail, and then I started getting some international hikes. I've done some hikes through Greenland and Iceland and New Zealand, and then most recently around Europe. And in 2019, I jumped in and did a stage race, which was a 170-mile stage race called Grand to Grand. That was the first time I really showed up as a hiker wanting to walk one of these things, and I finished about mid-pack without running, which gave me some confidence. And then in, like you mentioned, Wes, in 2021, I had signed up for the Triple Crown, and then about 2 weeks before Cocodona, I sort of heard about it, and we're coming out of COVID and wanted an adventure, and sort of just jumped in off the couch to try to do that, and that really set things off. Doing that one, I did Bigfoot. After Bigfoot, it was the first race I did that I just loved so much. I signed up immediately for the following year. I did Moab, loved it, but said I would never do it again. and that kind of rolled around to this year, where eventually I got peer pressured by Courtney and some other people to jump back into Cocodona, which was super fun to come back and do again. And I had always wanted to do Tahoe. I had signed up in 2019 for 2020. That was a COVID cancellation to 2021, which was a Caldor fire cancellation. So I couldn't wait to do Tahoe. That was probably the one I was the most excited for. Had a great race, a fun race. This year, rolled into Bigfoot, and then I thought I was done for the year, and then started having some serious FOMO just days before Moab, and was able to slide in and get the Triple Crown and get really time with my people. I really missed all you guys, and it was good to be back on trail, and I wanted those fall colors in the Lascelles, and so it all kind of came together for me pretty spontaneously, in a little bit of like in a sort of an unintended way, which is funny, but I'm glad it happened the way it did.
Yeah, cool. Well, I think if you look at what Aaron was able to do this year, in almost 400 hours total out on the course, just an incredible amount of physical fitness to be able to do it all. Really, really remarkable. Well, let's talk with Courtney next. Let's get to know a little bit about you. It was funny because you and I had conversations a few times during the last 4 races, but we didn't ever meet until, what was it? Was it at the Dry Valley aid station, the first aid station at the 4th race this year that we finally met? It's just amazing.
Yeah, it's crazy actually. It's amazing how you can cross paths with so many people and not cross paths in these races, kind of. So yeah, I'm Courtney. Thanks so much, Wes, for putting this together. This is so fun. I'm really excited to hear from my peers, actually. Like Wes said, I started running ultras in earnest in 2019. And actually, I didn't grow up a runner at all. I grew up hiking and backpacking. But actually, for me, running was a punishment in sport. Like, we would do it when we got in trouble or for conditioning, and I really just didn't like it. But something happened to me in 2018, actually. My 7-year-old son died suddenly from a respiratory virus. And I just didn't know what to do with myself. And so somehow in the sort of grieving process, I found running. And initially it started in 2019 as a curiosity of like, could I run a marathon? What could that be like? And then as I dug into running a marathon, I started to learn about the world of ultras, and that just seemed so fascinating. How do people run more than 26 miles at once? It's crazy. So then I decided I would try to qualify to run a 100-miler. And somewhere along the way with COVID, I got my arm twisted of like, there's this new 250-mile race. Maybe you'd want to do it. You're the only person crazy enough to try this race. So I signed up for Cocodona with no plans to sort of run that as my big, long first ultra endurance event. But because of COVID, it ended up being that I ran 100K and then I was at Cocodona to run 250 miles. And showing up there, I had no idea what I was getting into. But I figured, at least I have a few days to sort of figure it out. And that experience was really, really transformational. I had never experienced anything like it, and it really opened my eyes to what's possible. And so then this year it seemed like, okay, of course I'm going to go back to experience the magic of that race again. And actually my friends decided to sign up and run it too. So 2 of my best friends who crewed me at Cocodona decided to run it this year. And then one of them had the harebrained idea of like, there's also this thing called the Triple Crown. What if we just go all in and just see what happens? So we all signed up for the Triple Crown in Cocodona. And as it would be, we started Cocodona together. We did finish that race, all 3 of us together, which was amazing. And we actually know each other from summer camp, from hiking and backpacking in our youth and in our 20s. And so this was kind of a way for us to do summer camp together as adults. What other way do we get to spend the whole summer together? And then over the course of the races, various things happened. And so it just turned out that now I'm the last one standing. But it really has been an extraordinary journey, and I've just met the most incredible people along the way. And I'm just really, really grateful for the experiences.
What a story. I think one of the things that was really incredible about your journey through these 4 races is how you were fairly consistent in the first 3, and then in the 4th one, you just blew everything out of the water and ran so much faster. But still, what an achievement to do all of them. And wow, thanks for sharing your story about that. That's really, really quite heart touching to hear that story. Nate, let's talk with you next. So I don't think I actually met you in person until Bigfoot, when you arrived at Bib Pickup with Dave Stinchfield. But yeah, I look forward to learning a little bit more about your journey through this whole thing.
All right, thank you again, Wes, for putting this together. I really appreciate it. It's an honor to be here amongst amazing other ultra runners. So my story is, I'm a middle school counselor. I'm originally from Philadelphia, I live in New Jersey now. I'm also a United States Coast Guard reservist. When I run, the last few years of doing ultras, I've dedicated my runs to raising money and awareness. We have a Coast Guard mutual assistance program. The funding goes to Coast Guard and families going to college tuition, or let's say they need a plane ticket to get home, and just learning and other resources. So that's my charity plug. I got into ultra running in 2018. My first race was the North Face Endurance Challenge in right outside of Washington, D.C. It was a 50 miler. I got lost. It wouldn't be the first time I got lost on a course. But it's just been a great wild ride and experience. I was just planning out the year, this race year, and I didn't know if I could accomplish all this. And I'm just, again, it's an honor to be here, and congratulations to everyone here as well for completing all 4 of these. But yeah, I was a high school wrestler, high school rower, and a college rower. Running for me was just cross training. I went through a pretty bad divorce, custody battle. And the times I couldn't see my son, my 8-year-old Parker, I would just run to kind of fill the void in. And just became my meditation, my Zen. So, Moab for me this year was awesome to do. Again, it was my 3rd time, and I was able to get a personal best. So that's why I was running. I was running for the charities. I dedicate the runs to my son as well. I give him buckles as a symbol to try to role model for him. And it was also great sharing miles with Aaron on the course in Moab, and we had a discussion about our great coach who's out there in Arizona right now trying to complete the 800 miles, Michael McKnight. So I wanted to thank him as well too for letting me have a really good race at Moab for myself, a personal best for myself. But again, it's just an honor to be here and to share this experience with everybody. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. Yikes, not showing the right screen. There we go. You had I think I had heard you say something that you wanted to make sure you finished Moab in less than 100 hours. Is that right?
That was my ultimate goal, to try to get my own personal best. I was sort of racing myself basically after the last three attempts. And like what happens in ultras, Tahoe, I went down the wrong side of Incline Village there and had to hike back up, and that's all part of it.
Oh gosh.
And then Bigfoot, we had some emergency I tried to help handle with another runner. So I was just glad to get it done, and I know those things are a part of it, and you got to help each other out first and foremost. So that's what I also focus on the races as well. If I see somebody that's out of water, like we would all do for each other. Yeah, it's been done for me, and I just like to pay it forward. So.
Yeah, right on. Well, I'll quickly introduce myself before we get into the conversation. Of course, some of you on the YouTube channel might know that I'm the host of this channel. I make videos of the runs that I do. And you might also know that I started running in 2012, pretty lightly at the start. I didn't even think I ran a 5K until 2014. But then in November of 2014, I ran my first half marathon, and that sort of started me down the path of exploring distance and seeing how far I could go. There was a certain kind of feeling I had when I finished that half marathon that was a combination of pain and elation and just all of the good feelings. And I think I've been chasing that ever since. But I ran my first 200 miler at Moab in 2019. I just love the difficulty of a 4-day or 4-ish day event. And as Nate mentioned also, I think that the community, the camaraderie that we all experience with each other is something that touches me deeply and I love being a part of. There's something special that happens when you meet somebody on the trail that is deeper and more meaningful than I think most relationships that I have in my life, and it's special to be a part of it. I did run all 4 of my races this year with a crew, mostly no pacers, although at Cocodona I had Leah run one section with me, so we got to enjoy running from Jerome down to Dead Horse Ranch State Park together. But for the most part, no pacers, but I really like having a crew. They're just there to support me, and I love sharing the experience with them. So I wanted to share that. And then I also wanted to share that I'm coached by Corinne Malcolm, an incredible ultra runner. I do get a lot of people who ask me about how I train and how how one does a journey from some distance to a bigger distance. And I just want to share, at least in my experience, that having a coach is incredibly valuable and can really reap a lot of rewards. If this is something that's important to you, I think it's worth the investment. Corinne and I started working together when I was starting to prepare for my first 50 miler in 2017. So it's been quite a long time that we worked together. A year later, she helped me do my first 100 miler. That was at the Mountain Lakes in 2018. And then we worked together for my first 200 miler in 2019. And then, of course, this year we were all about the recovery and doing all 4 races in 1 year. So I'm a big fan of having a coach, and I just wanted to make sure I inserted that during my part of it. So I'm going to put you all back on screen. I hope you're ready for that. I'm really excited to have this conversation today with you guys. I mean, it's what we've been able to achieve as athletes is something that is probably shouldn't be understated. I know that I personally understate anything I do, but you guys should all be so proud of this. I mean, what an incredible thing. Let's start with some questions. We did get some questions ahead of time, and I think one of the things that people probably it would be interesting to have a little bit of brief discussion about is how did you guys transition from some of the shorter distances, like 50 miles or less, to 100, 200, these longer ones. I mean, I think for me, having a coach was instrumental in that. But any of you guys have some specific thoughts about how you found that transition going from shorter ultras to longer ultras? Jump in.
Yeah, you want me to start?
I want you to go, Aaron. I saw your hand pop up. Aaron, go for it.
Yeah, I mean, mine's easy because I'm curious the other way around. I want to know how I transitioned from 200s down to 100s or 50s. I've never done a 5K or a 50 miler or a 100 miler. And I just started running about a year ago. So I do think with these longer journeys, depending on what your goal is, they're totally hikeable. And in fact, a lot of people end up hiking a majority of them. And so to me, I always thought that these people were running the whole time. And once I figured out they weren't, it gave me a lot of sort of confidence for it. So for me, it was the other way around. I transitioned from being used to spending a lot of time on feet and being pretty self-sufficient and through hiking and using my gear and being out in nature and with myself for long periods of time or with other people. So I felt that transitioned really well into 200s, probably the easiest way, but I'm very intimidated to go do 100 or 50.
Yeah, there's certainly the shorter distances are certainly a lot faster. Courtney, did I see you're about to pop in?
Yes. So it is interesting. I like what you said about having a coach because people ask me all the time, how do you train for these? And the truth is, I don't actually, I just do what I'm told, honestly. I rely on my coach, Alicia Vargo. She trusts, I trust her and she trusts me, and I just do whatever she lays out for me. And then I know that when I show up to that starting line, I'm going to be ready. So there's that. I think what Aaron said is really important about the hiking. There is a lot of hiking involved in these races, especially 200 miles. And so there is that piece, which is really interesting. And I think also what's also interesting is for this distance race, it really is a mental thing, right? And it really is about showing up to run the race that I'm here to run. And for 200 miles, the point is to just keep moving, right? So it's yes, there's a transition in training, being able to go for consecutive days, but more than that, it's just changing my mindset of I will have to continue to keep moving forward, whether I'm in pain, whether I'm hot or cold. I will just have to keep moving forward and being prepared for that mental aspect.
Yeah, that's a great point. Nate, we were talking earlier about the advice for someone doing their first 200, and I think Nate, you had said that you had something that you could share, because I think that's one of the interesting things about this is I think a lot of people are curious about 200s, but what's some good advice for somebody who wants to go after their first 200 mile distance?
So, I mean, I know it's all relative, based on each person, but what I found, and I received this advice from a good friend, my friend George Chamel. He ran across the United States a few years, probably 5 or 6 years ago now. But anyway, you just really recommend it. Obviously, the obvious things like take care of your feet, your toes, take care of your, everything you're going to be using out there. Definitely, feet again, but also elevating them. So if my first 200 was Moab, or 200 plus was Moab. So I just made sure every time I rested, even if it was for 5 minutes, I elevated my legs above my heart, so the blood's flowing back down. After all that pounding for so many days, you just need that relief, and that sort of recharges. I still do that to this day. I've done it for both Triple Crowns, but that really revives my legs. Of course, you're going to get tired again at some point, but it really kind of gives me some more use out of them during the race just by stopping. And even if it's a dirt nap or a trail nap, I'll just find a log and sort of lay upside down and just have them above my heart, definitely, and get the lactic acid back out a little bit. Also, just kind of starting out slow if it's your first one. My first Moab, I tried to go out hard for me anyway, and I was able to survive it, but the last half was rough, but this year my strategy was going out slower and then just saving it for the back end. So, and then just definitely your nutrition and your diet. I know McKnight's big on low carb. That seemed to work for me this year at Moab. At least I felt pretty good the last 40 miles. But again, everybody's different. I know some people are vegan and that works for them. So you just also have to find key in on your nutrition, definitely.
Yeah. And it's amazing how different everybody's needs are, and how much it comes down to figuring out what works for you, and during your training process, trying different things out. And I think that's an experience or a journey we are all on. There is definitely a level of pain and discomfort involved. Tyler K had asked a question on YouTube before this the live started, asking to hear about the pain level and discomfort we experience during these races. Is there a pain hump that we get over if once our feet start hurting, or does it just continue to grow yet you push through? I know that for me, I think my feet started hurting during, most memorable, of course, is Moab, but I think 30 miles in or even less, my feet were hurting, and I don't think they stopped hurting till the end. Even in the early races, I was hurting most of the time. And I don't know, at least for me, I guess I just find that it's just one of those things that's a part of it. Like, yeah, I'm going to complain probably every aid station about how my feet hurt, but that's just a part of it. Do you guys find any interesting strategies or ways to cope with the pain that sometimes feels almost constant during these events?
Yeah, we can make our way around again.
Yeah, go for
it. I would say I generally felt pretty good through most of them. Maybe I just remember Moab because it's the most recently, but it wasn't until about that Dry Valley aid station in Moab, and a lot of it's probably just the impact of all the hard roads and whatnot on your feet. But my feet were just killing me, and it comes in waves, and so I'm very accepting of it. But someone taught me a trick actually this year in Moab that kind of stuck with me, where they had said that you could kind of pretend like it's supposed to ignoring the pain. I sort of accept the pain, but I pretend there's somebody else that's experiencing the pain. So I actually started pretending there were somebody else's feet.
I love it.
And how bad I sort of felt for this other person and their feet. So I'm like, oh my gosh, this other person and their feet, they have to walk another 100 miles on these things. I must really be so miserable for them. I feel so bad for this other person and their chafing in their feet. And so every time it would come up, I would kind of like almost make me laugh when I was just like, oh, that other guy, like, really sucks to be him. And then it kind of just almost sort of made it go away after a while. And then, so that's just the way that I started dealing with it, and during the hard roads of Moab. But on the softer trails, like on things like a Bigfoot, like I just felt so good.
Oh, good for you.
So, yeah.
Did any of you guys have blister problems during the runs? And if so, how did you deal with it?
I definitely did. My big saving grace was Todd during the Triple Crown there, because he put on that second skin tape, and it really.
You're talking about Todd Nardi, the one of the medical guys, yeah.
Yes, amazing job. Almost all 3 races, he was able just to put that second skin tape on, if I'm saying that right. But he just pretty much guarded those blisters. They were still there, but they were more manageable under the tape. So that definitely did wonders for me.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
I know that I suffered blisters in all 4 races, but in different places every time on my feet. There was at Cocodona this year, I had calluses underneath the ball of my foot, and I had blisters underneath those calluses that got really painful. So I started to learn about proper foot care and lotions, and I got this awesome like grinding wheel for my calluses. So I started to get rid of my calluses so that by Tahoe, a lot of those calluses were gone, so I didn't get the blisters underneath them, but I ended up with blisters in other places. So I kind of feel like I was always getting a blister somewhere. I was chasing them around my feet, I think. But
Yeah.
yeah, do you have any experience dealing with that, Courtney, during your races too?
Yeah, actually, it's interesting because at Cocodona, I couldn't tell if I was getting blisters or what was happening. So we did some preventative tape, which actually really helped. And I think especially like going into the first 200, the feet just aren't, ready for this sort of like endurance and this kind of like wear and tear over several days. So the preventative tape actually really, really helped. And I typically don't have issues with my feet. But what's fascinating is because each of these courses was so different in terms of terrain, over 200 miles, I started to feel the difference. So like Cocodona is pretty hard on the feet because it is desert and rocks. Tahoe was actually, I felt like those trails were really buttery and nice, and I got no blisters. And same goes for Bigfoot, lots of dirt trails, pretty easier on the feet for me. And then actually at Moab, I think a combination of going faster, because I ran that much faster, and also the hard terrain caused me to actually get pretty significant blisters for the first time in one of these. And I think just like getting on top of the blisters immediately is like the number one most important thing I learned,
Yeah.
Because once they're there, they're staying. And so then it becomes a management thing and to try not to get them worse. But then at some point, around mile 150 or beyond, it's really just like, you're just running through it. You just have to manage the pain. And actually it's crazy how the pain transforms. I think this was kind of in the question, is like at some point, honestly, the pain is there and then it'll not be there. And then it'll be there, and then it'll not be there. And you just continue to move forward because if you just continue, it will transform eventually. And the only way to like get to the finish line is to just keep going.
Yeah, that's a good. I like that last part especially. The only way to get to the finish line is to keep going. Yeah, you're never gonna get there if you stop. Yeah. We got quite a few questions from people who are curious about what happens in between these races. I mean, that's one of the things that's most interesting about what we went through this year was that not only did we do like a once in a lifetime event, we did like a once in a lifetime event 4 different times. So let's talk a little bit about the recovery period between each, or what kind of training was going on in between each of these races. I'll start us off and then maybe head over to Nate after that. I think that for me, again, I'm working with a coach, and I liked the comment that Courtney made earlier about how she just does what she's told. That's kind of what I do too. I just look at what I'm assigned to run, and that's what I do. But pretty much after every race, for about a week, I did absolutely nothing. I took Epsom salt baths and ate a lot and slept a lot, but did pretty much no physical activity. And then after a week is when I started to do a little bit more light running. Sometimes, depending on the schedule, there might be some longer runs, but there really wasn't a lot of big training for me. I feel like it was mostly maintaining the fitness to get me to the next 200, and of course taking care of blisters and grinding them off with my fancy foot tool. I guess I found that the times in between the races were a nice time to reflect, I think, almost emotionally on the previous event, and start to think forward about what we can do differently to improve on the next one. But yeah, I think that for me there was actually not a lot of training involved in the in between. It was mostly just, like I said, a kind of a maintenance thing. Nate, you talked about, keeping your feet up and various things you're doing to keep yourself in the recovery mode in between races. So I'll go to you next. Talk a little bit about what it looked like for you between races as you were recovering and continuing your training.
Okay, so for me, I was an ocean lifeguard. I still am part-time in the summers in New Jersey. So I always want, I was a rower, I was a swimmer, and I go back into the ocean, honestly, and just I swim. It's low impact, stretch out, definitely do some yoga. Like you were saying, I don't do as much training in between, especially with this amount of volume with these races. I was kind of figuring out my own way before I ended up, going on with McKnight about a month before Moab. But before I signed up with him, I was just basically figuring things out. Like I said, I'll just lay in, sort of float in salt ocean there and stretch, Epsom salt baths, like you were saying as well. So that's what I found, and just a lot of meditation as well, and just visualizing the next race and what my goals are. So.
No, that's interesting. I like how not only were you considering your physical needs, but also your spiritual or emotional needs with the meditation. I think that's an interesting thing to point out. Yeah, that's cool. Let's talk about sleep. I think that's one of the questions that a lot of people ask. I mean, we have a few questions in the chat. In fact, let's even try, let's do something fancy. Let's put a question on the screen. How much sleep have you guys had in total per race? I think there's a lot about sleep, and we can talk about this sort of in general too, because I think there's a question about sleep stations versus trail naps, and so I'm curious to know what your guys' experience with sleep was during this. Let's start with you, Courtney. What kind of approach did you have? How did your approach to sleep change once you got started? Give us a little bit about that for you.
The sleep thing is so fascinating. I mean, I think it still is fascinating to me. So Cocodona last year, showing up for my first 200, I really had no idea about the sleep thing. And so my goal was to sleep as much as possible. So I would run between aid stations so I could sleep. And so I still sort of finished at the end of the race, but I got about 15 plus hours of sleep. And then this year, the first race I did with two of my friends. So we were sort of managing 3 different sleep needs, trying to get in some sleep as much as we could, but still, of course, not miss a cutoff.
Yeah.
So there's kind of that strategy of like getting as much sleep as possible. But then I think once my body adapted to this sleep deprivation, I realized that actually for me, less sleep is easier. And the reason is that the more I slept, it would be like 2 or 3 hours, I felt like my body was starting to try to recover. And so getting up, getting all my gear on, starting to move was a lot more painful and hard. And so this last race at Moab, I actually just gave myself 15 to 30 minutes a night, basically, to sleep. And so I slept far, far less this time. But actually, I felt like my efficiency and ability to move was much improved in doing that. That's not to say that it's not hard at night. Like, definitely I had one night at Moab where I felt like I was just basically a zombie walking through the night.
Yeah.
And so for that, there is, I use a lot of different strategies to try to stay awake, caffeine. Actually, we started using smelling salts. Eating, of course, nutrition is a huge piece of being tired. Actually, it's kind of counterintuitive, but like when we feel sleepy, like we need to eat. Also taking trail naps. It's amazing actually how rejuvenating a 15-minute trail nap can be, or even a 5-minute trail nap for that matter. I found that at Moab, those were so much more relaxing and I felt so much more rested doing that than actually getting a 3-hour nap from other races.
Yeah, I know that I took a 10-minute nap that completely turned my race around on the third day during Moab. It's amazing, like you say, even the shortest of naps. Aaron, you made a comment to me, I think, maybe after Bigfoot about your sleeping strategy. I think you had there was just something about that conversation that stuck out to me about how you had approached Bigfoot. But I was curious, how the sleep goes for you, what your approach is, and and how that evolves, through a race or over the course of these 4 races?
I think one thing was consistent in all 4 is that I wasted a lot of time early trying to banking sleep early when my body just had too much adrenaline. I really couldn't go to sleep. So I'd end up laying down for a few hours and getting very little sleep. That was something that I didn't quite fix, that seemed to happen at all 4. But eventually deep into the race, for me, at least, it feels like I need to get in like a few real REM cycles. So I need to actually get a couple hours of real sleep. And every single one, it happened pretty late. Tahoe was 150 miles in. Cocodona, I was in Sedona about 150 miles in. Bigfoot, it was at Chain of Lakes about 130 miles in. Moab, it was more at the halfway point, and I slept a lot during Moab. But at every single one of those, I think I sort of pushed the limit of me feeling like I could barely get to the next aid station. And I kind of like that. And then it's a little uncomfortable, but then I kind of push through, and then I just like sleep real good, and then I get it done, and then I'm good to go. It's also a little unique for me because of kind of my journey of what I've sort of done in between these races. I didn't really, in between, I took my recovery pretty seriously. I love doing cold plunges. I love doing muscle work and nutrition and getting sleep in between. And I do cupping and I really treat my recovery pretty seriously in the middle, but I was also going nonstop. In between these things, it was kind of somewhat of a lifetime. I went out and saw my coach halfway between Tahoe and in between Cocodona and Tahoe, and did a little running. And then in between Tahoe and Bigfoot, I went out to Badwater. I was volunteering at Western States. I hiked up to the escarpment to see the runners. I was volunteering at TRT. I hiked the Timberland Trail. I was training with friends in Sandpoint. And then I went to do the Dolomites. So I was kind of going nonstop. And so my level of sleep that I needed actually increased as I went through these 4, where I started feeling by the time I was hitting Bigfoot, and then especially into Moab, I was just needing more and more sleep for every 200 that I did the previous 200.
Wow. That's amazing to me how much you're able to accomplish. All the volunteering and going out to other races too, that just sort of keeps it all interesting. Nate, you ran Badwater this year.
Yeah.
That doesn't feel to me like a very that seems like an interesting choice for recovery in between events. But of course, there's no sleeping during an event like Badwater. What was your sleep strategy like when you were doing these 200s? Curious to know, especially since I think you were on the course perhaps the longest of us during these. I'm wondering maybe if you also got the most amount of sleep.
So maybe not about the most amount of sleep. I've tried different strategies with sleep over the years. I used to try to wait, because typically if I'm doing a 100-miler, like you said about Badwater, I don't sleep. I did actually take a 15-minute nap in the van at Badwater, at the crew van, but I've been getting better at feeling my body out. If I think I need some rest, I've been trying to actually go for it as to push harder sometimes lately. I used to try to get through. The first year I did Moab, I pushed almost 100 miles, and then I finally, I crashed and had to sleep. But this year I tried something different. For about 40-ish, I took a 15-minute dirt nap. And that's just something I had to really work on. I didn't really perfect my trail or dirt naps until about Bigfoot last year. And I think a race like that, for me, sleep was necessary to finish. I had to try to force myself. And finally, I've gotten more comfortable with the dirt naps. Well, I sleep at an aid station. Depends on the noise. I started bringing earplugs this year, and they helped a lot. But typically, what I'm on now is about 2 or 3 hours at a sleep station. That's what I tried at Moab this year. And actually sleeping more for me and sleeping earlier on the front end definitely helped me with a better time. So I've just been experimenting, but I think for me, it's like a 2 or 3 hours at an aid station. That was actually helpful because I know Aaron had talked to Mike on the phone, and Mike had recommended, trying to get at least 2 hours of sleep at each sleep station in Moab. So I went off that advice.
Yeah, that's good advice. I know for me, I had 3 proper lie downs at Moab, 90 minutes each, and then I did 3 trail naps, which totaled about another maybe 45 minutes. So for me, a little over, let's see, 4.5, a little over 5 hours of sleep total. And I would say that between 5 and 6 hours total was pretty common for me throughout the 4 races.
Yeah, Wes, I try to total mine up. I came up with about what I think is about 19 hours of sleep.
For all 4 races?
Yeah, I think so.
Wow, so you were averaging, that's a little over 4 hours per race.
Yeah, I thought in Cocodona I got about 6. Cocodona, Moab, I got 6, and Bigfoot I got 4, and Tahoe I put 3, but it might have been 2. Yeah.
Gosh, that's remarkable. All right, some other questions. I want to be thinking about time and making sure we get through some of these things. I do have a question that I feel like is a little bit sensitive, and I'll answer it first. And if any of you guys want to take it too, I think one of the questions I often get is, well, people often find out how much these events cost, and it's shocking how much individually each race costs. And then you do 4 of them, it's 4 times as shocking at least. But of course, I think the other part of it is, how do you arrange for your time off of work? So I think I'll talk a little bit about, at least from my experience, and then I'll let you guys, if you want, to share this too. This is a very difficult thing to fit into your life. That is by definition, because each race takes at least a week out of your life. I think in my case, I think it took about 2 weeks out of my life each time. And so just an insight into my life, in 2021, last year, when this race, when I did Cocodona, it just so happened to coincide with me quitting a job. So I quit a job right before Cocodona, and then that gave me time to do Cocodona. And then I ended up quitting the next job I had this summer in June. So I did the first couple races with a job, and then I did the next couple races without a job. So I'll tell you one piece of advice. If you don't like your job, this might be a good opportunity for you to try something new. Although it may not be the most financially wise decision. But for me, certainly life changes in employment gives an opportunity for 200-mile races. And then in terms of paying for it all, I think future me, when I'm 80 years old and I'm looking at my retirement fund, I'm going to be like, oh, sad. I hope that you enjoyed those 200s, Wes, because the money that I could be using to pay for some sort of medication or something when I'm 80 is probably going to be gone. So I did dip into my retirement a little bit, but I do hope that this was an amazing achievement and life experience that I will always remember. Any of you guys have interesting life advice for how to fit something like this in with finances and jobs? Ooh.
Yeah, I mean, I can
ahead,
speak
Courtney.
to that. So I work full time and I have kids, and I have a partner and, a pretty full normal life. So I think that one thing is, I work at a company. I mean, I love my job and I love my team. And I work at a company where we historically had an extended time off policy. So that's part of why I chose this particular position at this particular company, because they value time off and they value employees having adventures and other things that fill their buckets. So there is that of choosing sort of the right company to be able to live my lifestyle. And the other thing is just like having the support of the team of like, I think it has meant a lot to be able to bring these experiences back to the workplace, and share what I learn out there with my team.
Yeah.
And then I also really appreciate having a really understanding family. My daughters are incredibly understanding. I take them to ridiculous places all the time for running things. They are so flexible with me getting in a run here and there during their activities. And then also like having a partner who's willing to travel to all these places and support me in this endeavor has just been hugely helpful. So it is one of those things where like choosing to do this is something that requires like the whole village get involved. And I'm just really grateful that I've had people in my life who are supportive.
Yeah, having supportive family is such an important part of this. I'm blessed to have a very supportive partner, and other supportive family members who have come into this. So yeah, that is definitely a big factor in this.
Can I ask a question?
Oh, Courtney. Oh, yes, please do.
Okay, I have a question for you guys.
Okay.
I want to know why. Why on earth would you sign up to do this? And then I also want to know, what did you learn?
What did we learn? Why and what did we learn? Hey, Nate, I'm going to ask you to go first, and then we can follow along.
All right. There's more than one why for me. Why to show my son these anything's possible, not just running, all these miles, but anything in life you want to achieve, to be a good role model, and to raise, the charity aspect, to raise awareness and funding, and just to motivate others to push yourself. I don't consider myself a great athlete, just a guy that doesn't want to give up. So, but that life lesson can be taken in a lot of different contexts, across different fields, whether you're, a musician, an artist, whatever your passion is, just don't give up, and inspire other people and help other people.
Do you find that this experience of doing 4x200s has been, you learned anything particular from this experience, having done it all now?
Yes, I've learned that, it's possible. Like you said, not all these miles, and push your body and your mind to a certain level. It's definitely doable, and it's very mental. Obviously, it's physical too. You have to have a good physical base, but it's a big mental game as well, and teaches you a lot about life, and it puts things in perspective, especially when you're, halfway through a 200-mile race and you're out there looking up at the stars, or just, contemplation. Find your zen, find your chi, whatever you want to call it, but it's a great place to be. I mean, so it doesn't have to be through ultra running; it could be whatever your passion is.
Yeah. Aaron, how about you? What motivated? Why did you choose to do all four? And did you learn? Have you come to some conclusion learning after it all?
Yeah, I don't know if you could throw back up that map or whatever you started with, but I was thinking about that when you threw it up, and it's like you look at going from Arizona to up to Tahoe to southern Washington back down to Moab, but just it's think about the journey in between, like everything else that it brought me to. Just Cocodona, like I might have not spent this time at the Grand Canyon or Sedona before, and then how that kind of brought me to Tahoe. And that was on Father's Day weekend. I had my dad up there to crew me and a bunch of friends and my coach. And it was really magical. And then just how Washington brought me to other friends to go visit at Sandpoint. So a lot of this was the adventure in between to go connect these dots. But then at the actual dots, at these actual races, they felt like this great social experience. I mean, to me, the people really bring me. I already love nature. I love being out there. These races sometimes they feel like cheating to me compared to through hiking. I don't have to filter water. They give me a bunch of trail magic and food to eat, and people cheer you on. So it's like, oh my gosh, like what a fun cheating way to sort of experience nature at sort of this fast pace. And so I have a ton of fun with them, to be honest. That's something that's probably a common theme. I just felt like it was such a fun experience. And then for me, in terms of like learning anything, I feel like I always come out of these things with such a clear perspective. I feel like there's this window of time I have in the weeks following where I'm actually a better person. I'm a more productive employee to my company or to friends or to family. And I feel like it kind of depends on what you sort of value, but for me, it's like it goes hand in hand with like having great experiences, doing something that's healthy, hanging out with the people that you want. And I'm very naturally curious. So I'm like, well, what would happen if I tried this thing? And so it feeds into that too. So it kind of has everything that I sort of want. And that's really what drew me to them. But I really didn't, on my journey, like I said, like I intended to do all four maybe last year. I didn't this year. So it was really interesting how it drew me back, and it worked out that way.
Yeah. Well, I think for me, I signed up for Cocodona for this year because I enjoyed the inaugural year and I wanted to see how they were going to improve the race from that first time. So for me, Cocodona was already in the plan. But then my daughter and I were volunteering at Bigfoot last year. And by the way, I recommend to everybody, please volunteer at these races. It's such a wonderful experience as a runner to see it from the other side. But my daughter, I think she was 18 at the time, she said, "Hey, Dad, you should run the Triple Crown." And that made me do it because I'm like, I want to impress my daughter more than anything. I want her to be proud of me. So I signed up to do the Triple Crown. And I think it was a little bit later that I realized that I had signed up for all four. It wasn't something that I necessarily intended to do. But the experience of having done them all has been really rewarding for me because I think it has shown me how capable I am as an athlete and how it's teaching me life lessons about perseverance and moving forward. I think that I really felt like I understood something during Moab this year that came as a part of my training. I'd done a training run at one point that was really sloggy and really sucky. And I remember at one point during it, I had this thought in my head like, oh wait, I can't just quit this training run because I'm in the middle of nowhere. I have to move on to at least some other place where I could, if I decided I wanted to quit, I could get extricated. And during some parts of Moab, and during Bigfoot, I had these similar thoughts of like, we are in the middle of absolute nowhere. We can't possibly quit right now because we're 20 miles from help. So even if I decide I'm going to quit the race, I'm still going to have a long hike. And so I really started to come to terms with this idea of just the inability to quit. Like, it's not just a matter of wanting to quit or not wanting to quit, but I just can't quit. And I think that there's times in life where I might want to quit, or I might want something that's uncomfortable to stop. And what I think ultra running is teaching me a bit of endurance, even in life. That there are these things in life that are difficult. We can't quit now. Let's at least get to the next aid station and see where that goes. So I think that's at least a little bit of a learning that I'm trying to take from this, so that I can move into my regular life. Courtney, so now you've heard from us. I'm curious, what have you learned from all this? You obviously did this. You started this off with your friends. I'm curious to know what your final takeaway is from the adventure.
Oh, so now I have to answer my own question.
That's part of the price.
Okay, well, so I guess the why was this was an adventure with my friends. That's true. But I think also about that is, losing my son was really hard and painful. And I think in life we are forced to walk through really painful things emotionally. And so I had this curiosity of like, if I can walk through this really hard thing in my life, what could I choose to walk through that could be really hard and painful and to accomplish something? So there was that curiosity. And then what I've learned is a couple things, Wes, along the lines of what you said, that I think is sort of the poetry of these events is like, it's almost like life condensed in 4 days. Like, I do feel like out there, I live a lifetime and I learn these lessons about grit and perseverance and trust and surrender and just keep moving forward. And I think that that's like how I'm meant to do life. And then the other thing about doing the 4 of them is really I learned to just rethink what's possible in my life. I truly never thought I would do this. If someone told me 5 years ago that in 5 years you will run 4 200-mile races, I would have said, no, you're insane. There is no way possible. Like, that's not even like on my radar. And I've learned that like with a little trust, a little faith, like truly anything is possible, and I'm only limited by my mind. Truly.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, well said. Thank you for that. I'm looking at the clock. We're just about coming up on an hour. So I would like to invite each of you to maybe leave us with a last thought, if you might have one. If there's anything that you want to say before we go, I'll give you a chance to think about that. And I want to point out a couple of comments that came in from the chat. Dave Lane made a comment about a book called Fixing Your Feet. I'm a big fan of this book, so if you don't already have it, a big recommend from me. And then there was a question, I think, from Garen Hill, and he asked, I'm terrified of Bigfoot. Is it warranted? I think the answer is yes. It's absolutely warranted. But at the same time, I think it's also something you should do. It's one of those things that it kills you in a very specific way, and it makes you better as a result. Thank you everybody for the comments and the questions, and I think that we did get a lot of the overall themes of these things. And Scott Jenkins congratulates us all. Thank you, Scott. He was there at Bigfoot. He and I ran a bunch together. So we can wrap this up. Is there any final thoughts that each of you might have as we say good day to our viewers? I'm going to start with Aaron. I'll go to Courtney and then Nate, and then I'll close us off. I think you're muted, Aaron. I think you muted yourself.
I did mute myself. I think anybody can do these things. If you want to do them, I think they're there. Obviously, it might be more fun if you train for them, but I think anybody can do them. And also, I think one of the beautiful things about this is just in doing hard things in general is that it translates to real life. And what I mean is that I think it gives you the confidence that if you just did this, if you just did your Bigfoot, if you just did your Cocodona, you sort of can walk around like, okay, what is somebody else going to bring me that's harder than what I just did? And it kind of changes your perspective and makes it almost like a sense of confidence that you can almost handle anything that life throws at you. And so that's what I think I'd leave people with.
No, that's awesome. I like that. Courtney, I'm going to come to you next.
Okay, so I've had a lot of people ask me of these races, which one would I recommend? And I think they each have their own sort of like special magic to them. And it really just depends on like where your heart is called, like where you're called to go. Like, is it the desert? Is it like the deep jungle, like Bigfoot? Is it, Tahoe's buttery trails? They're each individually just so magical in their own way. And it just kind of depends on what kind of adventure you're up for. And I think to echo what Aaron said, I do believe now, like I said, I never thought I would ever do this in my like wildest dreams. And so I do think if this intrigues you, go that direction for sure, because your life will be changed. And I will say another thing about these races in particular is like I've made lifelong friends from these endeavors, and I can't say that about other activities or other distance races or other things. It's like there is something really miraculous that happens over 4 or 5 days out there on the trails with the same people.
Yeah, I know that I echo that tremendously from my own heart. So thank you for saying that. Nate, my friend, I'm going to hand it over to you one more time. Sounds good.
I was thinking of a quote. I just read Matthew McConaughey's Green Lights book, but my crew chief at Badwater, he mentioned this, but I just think when I think of these races, especially in between it, you're out there in elements, just keep LIVIN, living. It makes you feel alive, being in the middle of these. And, it's about the journey, right? It's not always about the end. So when you're out there, enjoy it, whatever distance you're doing. And like Courtney was saying, the community, it's amazing. You're out there with a group of like-minded people, goal-oriented, experiencing the same thing. So I met so many amazing people. And it's all about patience, right? It comes down to patience. I met David Jones at Badwater last year, and we were hiking Father Crowley, and he just said this whole sport's about patience. That's what it comes down to. It's not instant gratification. It teaches you patience.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, I think that one of the things I learned during my time doing these races is that I'm a really good day 3 runner. And what sucks about that is that I've got to go through days 1 and day 2 to get to that day 3. And sometimes days 1 and 2 are just really, really uncomfortable. And so I think my last takeaway is probably very similar to what my friend said, which is just that this sport, and especially doing multiple 200s in 1 year, is an achievement to be sure, but is definitely within the grasp of us humans. It takes a lot of effort to train for it, and then of course doing it is really difficult. But I think it's something that we're all capable of, and I'm just so grateful to the universe for allowing me to find that this is a sport that I like, and that I get to do these things and share the experiences on my YouTube channel with you guys. I find that to be such a gift to me, and so yeah, I love this so much that I'm really grateful that we get to talk to you about it, because there's something about it that's different than 50 milers and different than 100 milers. It's just special. So I don't feel very articulate about that, but I just want you to know that my heart is almost bursting with love for this. And so I'm going to come back to all you guys. Thank you for your time today. My heart is bursting for you. You're so kind to help us out with this and share your tales with the audience. I put into the description of this video the Instagram handles for all of the people who ran, including Sean. So Aaron, Courtney, Nate, and Sean, all the Instagrams are there. So please follow them. Please support Aaron's charity. The link is in his Instagram. Nate, is it your charity have an Instagram, or can they find that through Instagram?
Yes, so it's just Nate Durbin on Instagram or Facebook, and I have the charity, the Coast Guard Mutual Assistance link on there.
That's fantastic. All right, guys, thank you so much. I really do appreciate you so much, and the audience, thank you for being here. I really appreciate you. So we'll call this over, and maybe we'll do one of these again. Again, thanks a lot for watching, and I wish you all a good rest of your day. And yeah, bye everybody. Thanks very much.
Thanks,
Bye.
Wes.
Thank you, Wes.